We will call the July 11th County Council meeting to order. Roll call.
Jim Meisner.
Here.
Linda Griswold.
Here.
Pete Ketchum.
Here.
Jonathan Myers.
Here.
Rob Henderson.
Present.
John Myers.
Here.
Matt
Pete, would you lead us in invocation?
Sure.
Please?
If everyone would take a moment to pray, please. Dear God, Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity we have this evening to meet as council. We pray for thy presence and influence and guidance this evening on our decisions. We pray that that we hear everything that's said and consider everything, all the proposals and information provided. We pray for these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. If you would please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is approval of tonight's agenda. There are a few modifications. The first is under section B, which is the consent agenda. We will be adding item 11, Health Department, for a additional appropriation request. And then under item C, salary ordinance and amendments, additional appropriations reduction from transfers, we will be removing item 3B. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the amendments.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Rob, a second by John T. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Public comments. Is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to address the council?
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Andy Barnhart, Chief Deputy of the Sheriff's Office. I just wanted to take a quick minute to, and I'm not on the agenda, so I just want to do this in a public comments real quick to give everyone a heads up. As the sheriff and I have been delving into budgets coming up, some things have come to light that we kind of knew were happening, but when we're putting numbers to paper, we're seeing some of this come to light. I know the sheriff's been very good about keeping you all up to date on the state of things as we go, as he likes to do. But I don't know if he's been able to communicate this with you yet. We are currently 13 people short in the jail, and two, those are correctional officers and 2 cooks. And this is something that we're struggling with on a day-to-day basis. We're getting ready to lose 2 more COs. And there was something that was said by another public official, not in this room, that I took to heart, which was that the county doesn't have a problem with keeping and retaining employees, and that is not the case. And I just want to tell you publicly that we are struggling, and we have gone through our entire year's overtime budget in the first 5 months of this year. And the only reason we haven't had to come to the council for an additional appropriation yet is because of the additional CO spots that we had, that the council was so kind to grant to us, that we have not been able to fill. And then some of those positions that were shy, we're able to move the money and to continue to pay for that, but it's coming. We're going to have to come ask for more overtime. And that is simply to keep our heads above water. So as we come into budget time, I fully respect the process, and I understand the difficulty that this council has in trying to make the decisions they do when it comes to things like salaries and things like that. And you're looking at the county as a whole and all the county employees. But I'm here to tell you that we are losing people to other agencies, especially in the jail. Right now, Marion County has a $5,000 retention bonus and a $5,000 or $10,000 hiring bonus, depending on your experience. They pay more. We're losing people to them. We're losing people to smaller counties. We cannot keep our heads above water, and it's becoming a safety issue. And the only thing that has kept us from drowning so far is the fact that the judges and the prosecutor have worked so well with us in keeping the population down and not filling that jail to capacity right away. And that is the only thing that's keeping us to the point where we're at. So, there's always been kind of a running joke about the guidelines and all these different things. I want to tell everyone here that salaries are going to be a big issue. And whether it's base salary as part of it, or whether it's things like retention bonuses, whether it's things that the council would look at in the future as far as overtime, I'm sorry, not overtime pay, but longevity pay, things like that, that other counties and other municipalities do to try to keep people around, that's something that needs to be considered. It takes a correctional officer about a year to be trained up fully between initial training, field training, and then to where they really understand what they're doing in the jail. And when we're losing people with 2 or 3 months in, that's not something that we can sustain. So I would just like the council to consider that and keep that in the back of your heads as we're coming forward with what our realistic numbers are. And I realize there's a job study that's coming. I've expressed my issues with the job studies in the past. I think that company is great. They've done great stuff for us with job descriptions and all that. So I'm not here to disparage them in the slightest, but their comparisons are not always apple to apple. And I would like you all to look at that and consider that when you're talking about Brown County, Bartholomew County, those are not like counties to us. They're not the same situation. Hendricks County, as everyone knows, is very, very comparable, and they are paying their people in public safety significantly more. And I know that we're just one small portion of the whole budget, but I would like you all to consider that as we go into the budget process.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Didn't we give a raise last budget?
Yes, absolutely. It was a very generous raise that helped a lot. There was some acknowledgement that it was one step in a multi-step process. And I'm not here to, I don't know what that next step would be. We're going to make proposals of those things. Yes, and we did get a generous raise last year, and that helped catch that gap up a little bit. But as I'll show with, I think the most telling thing is, again, that Hendricks County and Monroe County, that are the one more populous and one less populous county than Johnson, that pay significantly more. And you can see that our people are leaving to go to those places to make that additional money. And I don't know what the answer is 100%. I have a whole lot of ideas, but where that all falls, I don't know. So yes, while that's extremely appreciated and was even higher than most county employees, we can't just be compared to that. When you have specialty occupations, you do have to look at like jobs and other agencies. That's the direct competition, because people don't typically go from one county office to another when we're talking about public safety. They don't typically leave public safety to go work at the clerk's office or something like that. So that's why there's a difference. Not that we're any better or any different per se in that, but it is a specialty thing and requires a whole lot of training to get started, and we just can't keep up.
I will say that, everybody knows that this is sort of my wheelhouse in my full-time job. And this is a problem for every agency, really across the country, but we're competing with agencies in the Indy metro area. And I have regular meetings and talks with law enforcement officials and leaders in those areas. A typical application process for a department is somewhere between 300 and 400 applicants, and most are hardly getting 50. It's the climate of law enforcement right now. A lot of negativity in the news, a lot of national lack of national support, and it's becoming harder to get people to want to do it. So to his credit, I think you will see in this area a lot of competing efforts to compete for the small pool of people that are interested in doing it by increasing. We're seeing all kinds of offers, from bonuses to some agencies are increasing the starting salaries and salaries of the first class deputies and patrolmen significantly this year, adding incentives, and we're quite honestly, they're interviewing us, we're not interviewing them. So it is a paradigm shift that I've never seen before, and what he's saying is absolutely correct.
And that's on the road patrol side, which is the more what people typically think of as a desirable occupation side of things. The jail, it does not typically even attract anywhere close to nearly as much interest. And we're talking about 10% of our workforce here. That's in the civilian world would be a huge problem. It doesn't seem like well, 13, that's bad, but that's a huge number for us. It is hurting us considerably. Things are starting back up, but not to beat a dead horse, but the last thing that I'll say about the job study is please look in depth at these numbers, because as we all know, you can make numbers appear to show anything that you want. And this company would never do that in the intent to mislead, but you have to look carefully at what they say. If they're comparing a first-year salary to a first-year salary, maybe things look equitable, but we don't have longevity here. Bartholomew County is a perfect example. They start off lower as a jail officer or as a patrol deputy for their county, but within 5 years, they're making significantly more because of their longevity pay that we don't have and we've never had. So make sure we're comparing apples to apples. The average, when I did that big colorful spreadsheet, I've always compared a 10-year officer because that is our average, but that for the road, that our average length of longevity right now is 10 years. So compare a 10-year deputy average to a 10-year deputy average when you're looking at those different things. And please take that into consideration when you're looking at all the things that are presented.
Well, and you did indicate in a conversation I had with you that that's where your biggest part of it is. But if you don't feed those guys and ladies that are there because you don't have enough cooks, because you're not paying them as much as they can make at McDonald's.
Correct.
I don't know what your hourly rate is right now, but they can make $16, $17 an hour.
Correct.
Flapping hamburgers, at McDonald's. And if we're not paying greater than, that, or,
Right.
reasonable, then you said you weren't able to staff all the cooks. And
No, we haven't been able to staff the cooks in a long time. That's a huge problem. Our head cook is working 60 to 70 hours some weeks to try to keep up with what's going on. And it's going to get to the point where she's going to get burned out. I can't imagine. I don't understand why she's not already. And really, a lot of that's the loyalty of some of the people we have working for us. And I know you see that and appreciate it. That's the only thing that's helped us limp by to this point. And it's not, there's no blame anywhere. It's just the state of things. And it just will have to be addressed in some way, shape, or form.
Do your deputies, they used to have longevity for the merit deputies. Do they still have that?
We do not have longevity pay. And as long as I have worked for the county, which is now since 1998, we've never had longevity.
Okay.
If that existed before, it was something that was gone. It's been gone for
It
decades.
was pretty meager, but it was there.
Yes.
I guess
The only
they got rid of-
difference, I'm sorry.
I guess they got rid of it before.
Yeah, they must have, yes. The
Yeah.
only difference that we have is there is no shift differential even for the road. There is, it's $900, I believe, for the jail at night. And there is incentive pay for $900 for detectives a year. We're talking about a year
Mhm.
to be on call, things like that. So and then a specialty pay of $1,000 if you're on call for SWAT, scuba, CERT, any of those things.
Mhm.
How much are you paying your cooks?
32,000.
Oh, so their
30,000 a year.
salary.
Yes. I don't know what that breaks down to hourly. 32,000 a year. And that's not even close to competing with the public sector. It's as hard
Right.
as that is to believe. It's not. And that's what we can't get anybody. And, working in a jail environment, it's not an attractive thing. You're not, well, you can make the same amount of money, but you're working in a jail around inmates and a lot of people don't want to do it. In fact, every time we post it on Facebook, not that you have to look at the public reaction, but there's more laugh emojis on there about the salary than there is any actual genuine interest. We paid thousands of dollars to Indeed. We've tried job fairs. We've tried everything we can think of to try to attract people. And it's just been a real struggle. And it comes down to money.
I believe that comes out to about a little less than $16 an hour for the cook.
Yeah, and I know you work night shift at fast food and you can easily make that.
Well, thank you for making me aware of it. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and as always, an open invitation, come in and happy to show you around, show you how things are working, show you the numbers and whatever it is you need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to add you under old new business. Okay. Did I forget to do that?
Yep.
All right. Maybe the public comment would suffice tonight. No, it won't. Okay. Next up is the consent agenda. These are items that we take in a single motion outside of additional appropriations. Once again, we did add a number 11, Health Department, and I believe everyone got the additional paperwork.
Motion to approve tonight's consent agenda as presented on the agenda and as amended.
Second.
A motion by Rob, a second by John Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is salary ordinance amendments, additional appropriations, reductions and transfers. First up is innkeeper's tax collections.
Good evening, I'm Ken Kosky, Director of Tourism. Wanted to commend our law enforcement brethren. Without their work, visitors aren't going to come to a county that's unsafe. I also wanted to offer my condolences to the Greenwood Police for the loss of their officer. So talking tourism, on July 23rd, I plan to meet the Parks Department, and I know you're all invited to come check out Hoosier Horse Park. We can talk about what we can do to benefit that facility, and also hopefully have time to tour the new obstacle course that opened last month. Since it opened, we've received so much social media that spread the word of that obstacle course. We've had military groups, firefighter teams, and we're soon to have 500 people from Michigan come down and use the course. So really a vision that we had and that we collaborated with county parks is coming to fruition and really driving people to come to our county. So really proud of that. Just got our innkeeper's tax report from Michelle Graves today, and we set a record for revenue in May. It was our strongest May ever, strongest month ever. So the trend continues. This is shaping up to be even a better year than 2021, which was by far a record year. So we're going to keep doing all that advertising, keep developing new tourism product, and continue to keep the momentum.
Thank you.
With regards to the obstacle course, is that free? And isn't it unsupervised?
Yes.
Or not?
So it's just like any county park. It's free. You can use it 365 days a year. Now, we also plan to have paid competitive events a few times a year to generate revenue. We're also partnering with Leadership Johnson County in the fall so that you can do team building. So if you have a company, you can bring out your employees and they can be put through a series of things to really bond as a team. So there's some revenue generation for the park, in addition to it just being a great amenity to what was the closed golf course.
Great.
In reference to that, you said there is no rental fees, correct?
Yes, you can, if you're just a person and want to use it tomorrow, you can just drive out there and.
But the 500 that are coming down, are they renting it?
They are not, but they're actually a military group. So I talked to Kevin Leonard at the parks, and they generally let military groups use it for free, but they're being encouraged to offer a donation if they'd like.
But if a private company is doing team building, then they will be renting it.
That's correct. That would be a rental fee.
So then another group of 20 couldn't come in at the same time because it's open to everybody. It would be a closed use for a rental period.
That's correct.
Okay.
Ken, how has your, and maybe I'm thinking incorrectly, but for lack of a better phrase, a return on investment. I recall when the board, your group had an outside consultant, there was some math involved there. Has your board considered or looking at how to gauge a return on investment?
So generally, the state will do a study like that for us, so we don't have to do that. And generally, in this state, the return on your investment for every dollar we spend on tourism, it returns $8. Now, this year, we are commissioning an economic impact study.
Okay.
And you'll be able to compare our budget to the economic impact in our county. And I believe that report will show that tourism is growing exponentially, and also the return on investment is probably higher here than in other counties or the rest of the state.
Very good. I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Anything further? Okay. Okay.
I'll motion to approve the request as presented.
Motion by Rob, a second by John Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next up is Cumulative Bridge.
Good evening, Luke Maston, Highway Supervisor. This request for additional appropriation is intended to cover the design engineering costs for our Bridge 605 replacement project. We were awarded federal funding for the construction phase of this project, but the design and, if applicable, right-of-way costs are borne by the county at 100%.
Very good. So this one's been programmed, it's programmed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, this would have been included in the reports that you saw earlier this year.
Okay.
Planned out, yes.
Very good. I'd motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion by Rob, a second by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, old and new business.
No.
Oh.
Local
I forget
food
one.
bank.
Oh, okay, sorry. Number 3, American Rescue Plan, item A, local food banks.
You have before you a handout that was presented to the joint committee. The joint committee passed unanimously. It passed, the ordinance passed this morning by the commissioners, passed unanimously, and it was to fund food banks. And just so this is in the public record, a person is in food insecure when they lack regular access to enough safe and nutritious food for normal growth and development and an active and healthy life. This may be due to unavailability of food and or lack of resources to obtain the food. What are the effects of food insecurity? Food insecurity can have a wide impact depending upon each individual's circumstances. Some of the most common yet complex effects of food insecurity include serious health and mental health complications, especially when people facing hunger are forced to choose between spending money on food and medicine or medical care. Damage to a child's ability to learn and grow. Difficult decisions such as choosing between paying for food and heat, electricity, rent, and transportation. Question, does Johnson County have a need? The answer is yes. Our population is 161,765. It's estimated that 19,000 people, or 11.7% of our population, are food insecure. Of that, 5,187 children under 18 or 13%, and over 1,900 seniors or almost 8%. In 2021, 4,687,000 pounds of food were distributed to those in need in Johnson County. And amazingly, the demand has increased by 75% since 2019. The suggestion was made for $100,000. That was approved unanimously, as I said, through the group, the joint group commission, and then the commissioners. And then also there was some discussion that if this program goes well, we could consider in the future considering additional funding. So I request the approval of the as recommended. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it for discussion.
We've got a motion by Ron, a second by Rob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For discussion.
For discussion.
Oh,
It's been long.
open.
Yeah, thank you. Fully supportive of the request, Ron, and want to thank you for your efforts to put it together. And I will vote in favor of it. My concern being a recent development that the county no longer has a grant writer, and part of the mechanism in place for this was to work through a grant process. So as quick as I'd like to see this roll out, I still want to have that protection, if you will, application process intact. So I just.
Yeah, Sheena and I are now the committee, and we'll be working on it. We're just starting. We're on the very beginning of it. And we've already received a draft of a grant application that Sheena and I will be going over, and then the whole process. And what we asked this morning, or what was asked at the commissioners meeting this morning, was a worthy question. There will be nothing happen until it comes back to the joint group for consideration of what we're actually suggesting be done. So we're just in the crawling stage of it right now.
Perfect. Thank you. That satisfies my question there. I want to ask about the ledger that Amy, it was sent out as of May 31st, so it's a little dated, but it doesn't appear, at least here, that we received as of May 31st, that second tranche of money. It's showing about 15 million as of May 31st. Okay,
As of today, we have not.
we have not. Is there a timeline on that second tranche? It won't impact this per se, but
A
just-
lot of I have not talked to any counties that have applied, but us, they haven't gotten it. So I don't know. Some of the bigger ones I haven't talked to, but
okay,
for the most part, there's been a lot of the other counties that have already received their second installment.
okay. Thank you. Those are my only questions, Jim.
That we have motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now on to old and new business. Number one is the approval of ordinance 2022-6, an ordinance modifying local income tax rates imposed in Johnson County. So as we discussed in our special meeting on June the 30th, this council is considering implementing an economic development income tax. I think what we agreed on in that meeting was a 0.2% edit with stipulations that that would not be enough in the future to fund the road projects and infrastructure projects necessary that are going to be needed. And it would take a combination of possibly funds from the jail lit and also some funds from the rainy day fund. However, those are recommendations, and what we're here to do tonight is to take a first vote on the passing of this new tax at 0.2%. This council at budget time and future councils each year at budget time will have to decide on the mechanisms that they are going to use to make up the revenue needed for these infrastructure projects. It wouldn't be prudent for this council to pass any stipulations with that other than maybe recommendations, as they would not be binding to future councils. That being said, I will open it up for discussion.
Hey, Jim, with regarding what you just said about other councils can change what we're doing here. Does that include this edit? Will they be able to raise or lower this edit amount on a yearly basis?
Yes, they would have that option if they so chose. So if, just by example, my recommendation is to transfer operating expenses out of the general fund and into the lit that are currently being used to operate the jail. Future councils and this council may not agree with that, but future councils may decide that they don't want to use or take that route and use those funds. And they could decide at any point to increase that edit tax. And that could be done annually if they so chose.
Thank you.
I have spoke with the people that I'm familiar with since our last meeting about this, and I've asked them how they would like for me to vote. And I've had a few people ask me a few questions about the deal. They wanted to know, because Smith Valley is near a lot of neighborhoods, it's a very suburban area, is there going to be sidewalks put in?
Yes, there would be in that design sidewalks on both sides of the road.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
For the record, you are.
I am once again Luke Maston, Highway Supervisor.
Thank you.
that was all my question for you on that, but so I like that though, sidewalks on both sides. Another concern that was brought toward me was, we've got, mom and pop, small businesses in the county. And their concern was that if by raising the income tax, the employers have to match that tax with payroll. And they were concerned about having to meet that as well. I mean, it's not just impacts the employee, but the employer who has to match that tax. They were
Well-
concerned that since, what?
That,
Okay.
I don't think that's accurate. This is just a income tax on each,
This is on your gross,
on each employee.
on your net.
Salary.
Income, salary, and it wouldn't affect the employer. at all.
Okay, good. And then the other concern was that I had some people express concern about the economic indicators that we're showing right now. That all the indicators are showing that we're still going for the next few years, going to be facing some hard times. And that was their concern as well. So we're not out of the woods with this whole downfall from COVID and the spiraling of how it influenced everything else.
Right. Well, and I think it's from the discussion at the June 30th meeting, I think that is the sentiment of this entire council. We all recognize that. Problem is, sort of the old adage of not now, when, and if not us, who. The county's infrastructure is failing. It is way overdue in many areas of the county to be improved upon. I'm sure we all get street complaints on a regular basis for the road conditions. And at some point, we're going to have to act on it. This is not a ideal time by any means, and that is, I think that's why we are starting at the low point on the edit. Future councils, when the economy recovers, will have the option to raise that. But right now, the 0.2% is getting that ball rolling so that we can start getting some funds in to start some of the projects. And with the stipulation that we are going to have to find additional revenue sources, whether it be through use of lit funds, rainy day funds, a combination of both, or other mechanisms down the road. But this 0.2% is a start. And I hate to say it because it is going to affect people. It is going to affect people's bottom line and families. But I think it is the least intrusive means that we have right now in front of us to get this ball rolling.
Well, and if you take it back, just, one additional comment, I won't belabor it. If your net income is $50,000 and you can just go on down the chart, which I did at home this morning, or this afternoon, the difference is $100 on the year between 0.014 and 0.012, which is what it is right now. That comes out to $8.33 a month. And as you go down, it's less.
If I could ask Luke to take the podium again, I would like to ask him something. Luke, you probably have the same forms we do, and you were here on June 30th. And the example that was provided in our information this week kind of includes the 0.2 proposed edit. And also, I guess if we would do a 0.2 lit or even appoint one lit and use some of the rainy day as described, maybe this year, next year, 1.5 million each. Would that take care of your immediate needs for the next couple of years? Can you meet those matches from the federal government, and can you take care of the projects you have planned?
At the moment, we have, barring cost increases for materials and labor, we just about have in savings right now what we need to complete federal aid projects that we've already been awarded. The issue is applying for new projects. This is application season for multiple options, federal and state money. We have to match those funds. So where we stand right now, we cannot pursue those applications reasonably and expect that we can fund our matches without impacting some other part of our program, which ultimately is our annual maintenance program. Essentially less road maintenance, which in turn puts us even further behind than we are now. The most pressing need that we've talked about for the last several months is the Smith Valley Road project, just due to the circumstance, the timing of the interstate project and the impact that's going to have on traffic patterns in that area. So it is the #1 priority project that had been listed in the reports that you've received before. We estimate that construction, that total project cost, including design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction, to be about $55 million. So the benefit of the most recent spreadsheets we've been looking at is to provide a visualization of if we take certain steps and it impacts more than just the edit, though that's for further discussion than tonight. Here's how soon we can reasonably expect to be able to fully fund those projects. So the immediate need for Smith Valley Road is to start the design engineering. As I mentioned, I think at the special meeting, we've already gone through the consultant selection process. We have draft fee proposals, but we don't have money to start that design. And the longer that we wait is just going to push construction further and further out.
Okay.
So the immediate needs for Smith Valley would be that design money. And hopefully in the near future, we'd be able to start right-of-way acquisition as well. The big dollar amounts we will have to save up for through whatever potential financing sources that we come up with.
And when you say save up for, we're still talking about priority projects.
Well, we're still just talking about Smith Valley Road.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So that's the top priority project.
It is.
So do you feel like you have a handle on the consensus of this council, what we talked about on the 30th?
I believe so.
Do you think that there's any fluff there at all? Or do you think it's barely going to meet your needs, or where are we with that?
So the best comparison that we have, reasonably, we're not going to get Smith Valley Road constructed before the interstate project is complete, and we've known that. The best comparison that we have is the funding years that we would have potentially received federal money for that project from NDOT had we chosen the relinquishment agreement. That would fully complete the Smith Valley Road project, or at least have the last portion of it under construction in 2027. Realistically, probably would not be completed until the next year. That's the best comparison in my mind of where could we have been, and through the funding options that we're discussing, can we meet that same schedule, or are we ahead, or are we behind? In the scenarios that have been discussed and were previously discussed at the 0.2 edit rate, that would put us potentially having enough money to complete Smith Valley Road in 2029. So slightly behind what we could have potentially done with the relinquishment agreement. The one thought that it really depends on what funding scenario we choose is how we actually let this for construction. Under the relinquishment agreement, we were going to break the project up into 2 phases, very large phases. Because we have to have that funding in order to execute the contracts, we may have to look at splitting the project up into smaller sections as we have funding available. The downside of that is potentially higher unit price costs. So there's a lot of that kind of consideration, but that is largely dependent upon whatever financial plan that we can come up with. We'll make
So-
adjustments as needed.
So with the consensus of this council, what we've more or less talked about creating as far as new tax and using some of these other resources, it sounds to me like even with that, you'll do your best to make it work. And it could be better. There's no fluff.
No,
Is that right?
none
okay.
whatsoever. In
All right.
fact, the
We're just trying to squeeze that
and
nickel.
I understand that completely.
Yeah.
The original needs list was that $350 million number. That was parsed down to that about $106 million number. So I think everyone understood that we're not going to be able to fix this issue overnight. I do have concerns. Those are for me to figure out on the remaining high priority projects in that $106 million list.
Okay.
Because feasibly, we aren't going to get much past Smith Valley Road with the funding scenarios that we've talked about.
Okay. Thank you.
And
That's
in
part of the
reality,
problem I have now. So
in reality, when there's no fluff, not only that is that all of your projections have not projected what's going to happen with the increased cost of materials between now and 2029.
we've been getting clobbered on our large project bids here this year. We have another one coming in August for construction next year, and I'm very concerned. We do those funding estimates 5 years in advance, and we apply inflation numbers, reasonable numbers, but we're not in a reasonable inflation time period. So there is a good chance, even the estimates that were provided in some of the original reports that you've seen, we may end up blowing those up once we actually get some of these projects to construction if the inflation doesn't get under control.
We're probably going to have to get into some financial gymnastics on the right-of-way acquisitions and the utility relocations
Yeah,
in order to be timely on that, correct?
correct. Design always starts first, and then we will, because there are so many utilities on this particular project, we'll be starting that coordination very, very early in the process. And we are anticipating some of those utilities being reimbursable. So utility coordination and right-of-way acquisition will likely happen at the same time. Those, we're hoping that we can stay on track. We've not had great success, and we're not the only ones with coordinating with utilities because they're as busy as anyone else is, particularly with the interstate here. So there's a lot of those types of things that we're going to try to do on our end to move the design and the preliminary processes as fast as we can so that we are ready for construction whenever that construction funding is available.
Thanks, Luke.
Now, the federal funding or state funding, when you put in for those bids or request, you have to show your funding source, right?
We
Okay.
have to provide a commitment. Those, I know that we've brought those letters to the council before, essentially committing to whatever agency we're applying to that, yes, we find and provide the local portion of the funding for this project. We are committing to that. And that is a requirement for those applications.
So on that, that's a good question. John or Jim about, I'm sorry, John Eddie, about the financing commitment piece of it. Because the scenario that was up on the board a second ago and that's been discussed has been several pieces working in concert to kind of get some of this solved, some of the funding needs solved over a period of time. And those financing commitments that you would, and I assume the commissioners and other councils would agree, yes, we have this commitment for funding in place. If that were to change down the road, in other words, a piece or two of this funding source today could include the criminal justice lit and rainy day funds. If future councils decided against that, because to someone's point earlier, we can't bind the future councils with this ordinance or anything, then there's a scramble, if you will, to make sure we honor that, and there's risk or liability back to the county, I presume, to either lose that grant or have any other recourse. Is that a fair?
So our financial commitment doesn't specify the funding source that we would provide. It just specifies that here's our estimate of the project, here's what we estimate to be the local portion, and we're committed to providing that.
Yeah.
Now, if that commitment is made upon a financial scenario that changes down the road, we have two options. One is we provide that commitment, and that funding that we commit is through some other funding source that we have available. Most likely a reduction in our road maintenance program is ultimately where those dollars would come from. The other option is we forego the project.
Yeah.
The money that's spent up to that point, and this is an assumption of we work through design, we work through right-of-way acquisition, we get to construction, and we don't have our match money. We will have spent a lot of money up to that point that does not result in a completed project. We would have to relinquish those funds so that they could be provided to someone else who is able to meet that match commitment. And not meeting your funding match commitments does not make you a favorable recipient of funding grants in the future. So that commitment is taken very seriously, because that money is programmed, if we are successfully awarded funding, for us to use for our project. And failing to meet that commitment could have impacts on the ability to get future funding.
Over and above the fact that you would have spent millions on design and property acquisition and everything else,
Yes.
potentially.
Those costs are not getting any cheaper either.
When will the jail be paid off? 2025?
Yeah, there's one installment of a debt payment on the jail bond. That would be the final payment, one payment in 2025. Then that debt is officially retired.
There should be and probably will be additional bond payments for community correction construction. Let's don't forget that.
Right.
There shouldn't be. And I say that because of the adequate cash on hand in the criminal justice lit fund should cover those construction expenses, or
Okay,
a bulk of those construction expenses. And number two, there is some, I believe in the regulatory bucket of ARPA, there is potential for some monies there too. All right, that has not been approved. That's not been anything like that, but yes, or to answer your question, the strength of the criminal justice lit fund going forward after, especially after bond is retired, is that cash will accumulate and it should be sufficient in amount to cover a pay-as-you-go construction expense with a community correctional facility.
Well, that's what, I mean, whether it paid or bond, but it is there for the potential of a future
It
correctional
is,
facility.
and there's other, Jeff Peters mentioned, and I can't remember the mechanism if we had projects over and above what's available in the fund, then there's other ways to do that, but I just don't recall those exactly, but there's other ways to get there.
Any other questions for Luke? Thanks, Luke. Is the council prepared to move forward with taking a first vote on a 0.2% edit?
I'll also note, Jim, prior to that, with the handout and the handout that was put on the screen, I think it's important to at least show or illustrate at the proposed 0.2, the distribution of the edit to the other cities and towns within the county. And that is on there as well. So the way it's set up by law is that, and this is based, clarified today with Mike Reuter, the percentages you see there are based on the property tax allocation method. We have two methods we can choose. One is population or property tax. Mike confirmed our best option is the property tax method. So a 0.2 edit based on the estimated calendar year 2022 certified expenditures is $49,637,917. 0.2 generates just under 10 million, of which the county gets just over 4 million. So that difference is split amongst the other cities and towns in the county. So I think that's important that to show that if we were getting, unlike the criminal justice lit, where it's 0.2, and someone would say, well, if it's 0.2 and this is 0.2, why aren't we getting the same amount? It's because of the way edit is designed.
Right. And it is also a mechanism for cities and towns to, a funding mechanism for them to tackle some of their infrastructure needs also.
Yeah, there would be onus, I'll get the terminology wrong probably, but there is a requirement of that local municipality or fiscal body to adopt an economic development plan or a plan to utilize these funds, which is in your packet. Again, you've seen it before, but pages 2 through 8, I believe, tells about edit. But those fiscal bodies, I believe, need to also annually adopt a plan, which I'm sure they would do without hesitation, but that's a requirement nonetheless.
So will DLGF be notifying those localities or those municipalities, or do we need to do that as a council body?
Well, assuming you pass something tonight, it will be published in the newspaper along with a notification of a public hearing that will occur at your August meeting. Whether or not there is an additional requirement to notify the municipalities of the possibility of receiving additional funds, I have not come across a requirement. Surely they already know.
Thank you.
Probably.
Okay. There's no further discussion. I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2022-6 as presented.
I'll move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
A motion by John Ed, a second by John T. Let's do a roll call vote for this one, please.
You always have me going first.
Let me go first.
Ron Deere,
I'll go first. Aye.
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Robin Houston,
Yes.
Jim Tyson,
Aye.
Jonathan Myers,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Nay.
Could have done that at the very beginning.
Is that motion, first reading of ordinance 2022-6 passes 6-1. Item 2, we will be adding, I believe Community Corrections would like to address the council.
Good evening, Tony Povinelli, Director of Johnson County Community Corrections. First of all, thanks for hearing me tonight. I apologize for not getting on the agenda, but we've had several discussions with each of you in the past. We, as in myself and/or Angela Morris and Steve Commode, Director and Deputy Director of Court Services, about our financial situation. And moving forward, we have come to that spot where we are in need of some money. So we did some projections moving forward. It looks as though we're going to be about 300,000 shortfall by the end of the year. Reasoning behind that, I think, has already been explained, but a variety of issues. Debt from last year getting paid this year, in addition to properly and adequately filling open positions to function. Anyway, I am presenting this problem to you and I'm also presenting a solution, or at least Amy and I met earlier today, and I hope that we at least have a short-term solution. Maybe we can work towards a long-term solution. But I am asking for a consensus to move 13 salaries, FICA and PERF, to the lit. And that would be for the rest of the year. And that would be officially requested and voted on in the August meeting. That would give us the amount of money that we need to get through the year. The reason why we came up with 13 positions, we have 13 correction officers that run the facility, the work release facility. And so it seemed appropriate to bundle one type of employee, I should say, together. And the most appropriate place, I think, seemed to be the lit, and try to stay out of requesting from anything from the general fund. Those funds need to be used elsewhere throughout the county. And seems as though the lit has got a more specified ability for us in criminal justice to be used for this purpose.
I think it's a wise solution to ask that it comes from the correctional and rehab facilities lit. And I think that does a couple of things. It frees up the general fund a little bit. And that's what we need to be able to do some of that highway stuff a little bit. Helps. So all in all, I think it's a good solution thought by you. And I'm in favor of it.
Their salaries don't come out of the general fund right now.
They do not?
They do not. So
Where do they come from?
Grant funded.
grant fees. So I mean, yeah, if we take it out of lit, we're saving it. Instead of taking it out of the general fund, so we're saving money there out of the general fund. But their salary is not currently in the general fund.
The additional expenditure is what's being requested to not come out of the general fund, but to
Right.
come out of the lit. And there is additional information about why there is a shortfall that goes back to bills not being paid in a timely manner as indicated in some prior issues with how community corrections was run. And I think we all were aware that there could be some challenges economically, and this is their effort to try to make that work and balance the payments and get everything back to where it should be. And then income may not be totally supportive of it in the future, as you explained to me today. Correct, Anthony?
That's accurate. And I figured we'd cross that bridge when we get to it. But so essentially 1.55 million was budgeted for community corrections. We get approximately $525,000 from the DOC grant. If we filled the facility, the work release facility, we have 100 beds. If we filled it for 365 days and every single person paid every one of their fees, we would come up with 728,000. Combine those two, you get 1.25 million. We also have another revenue stream of home detention that fluctuates in the number, maybe 50 people. Anyway, that would be, I think the 1.55 million was a dream of every single bed being filled all year round and every single offender paying every one of their fees. So there's a lot of stuff that we don't have control over. We don't have control over when somebody is sentenced to us. We don't have control over when a raise is given, which I want my employees to get as big of a raise as we can, but being self-funded, that has to come from somewhere. And historically has not come from the council, has come from self-funded. So ultimately, this is where we're at. And I'll be coming up with solutions when it comes to budget hearing time. But the problem at hand is the shortfall that we're going to have for payroll coming up here soon.
This is just a heads up that he wanted to bring to.
Yeah, so I'm a bit confused. I mean, we would have had to have paid it out of the general fund, correct?
Somewhere, yes.
We'd have to pay the shortfall somewhere.
Okay.
I can't remember a time I've been on the council. This is my 8th year that we ran into this where we had to pull from the general fund to fund anything out of community corrections. And I know this is not on you. You're in a month or two into this and paying the price for what's been done previously. I get that. But I think maybe individually before budget time, we probably ought to have meetings with you to kind of wrap our heads around what you're looking at and ways to.
Absolutely. And I'll be happy to, and this is why I wanted to present to you guys and give you guys the opportunity to ask questions. And I don't have all of the numbers in front of me, but I'll be happy. Any questions you guys have, I will be happy to come prepared to answer those. I can say roughly, give or take, 6 or 7 years ago, there was approximately $1 million in the commissary fund. That as of February-ish was about 80,000. So where it looked like everything was sustaining itself, what was actually happening was money was being taken from commissary and to cover other stuff. And those things were, nobody's accusing anybody of spending commissary money on things that it wasn't statutorily allowed to spend. It's just, it looked like, it appeared to you guys, because you guys don't have as much oversight over the commissary, it appeared that everything was all the same. In reality, there was a whole nother fund that was just getting
Is
drained.
this because grants that had previously been applied for and obtained in the past were not being sought after? Or?
Well, so for example, the DOC fund grant, I don't know the last time that it was raised, but it seemed like they kept doing the same, about the same amount. And in meeting with other directors and other meetings around different counties, we have requested the least amount of the different places that we've talked to. For 2023, we've increased the request by $250,000. We want more. We just don't think that we can go from 525,000 to $1 million in 1 year. So we're going to start working our way up in that request by DOC, which it's all taxpayer money, just gets spread out across the state.
What portion of this, of unpaid bills from last year? Let's budgeting 101, there was budget to pay bills last year. And when they didn't get paid, that money went back to the general fund, correct, Amy? Where does it go when they don't pay the bills?
Actually, there wasn't the cash in the fund to support the appropriation. So what that paid was paid from the funds.
So the additional expenditures we're making this year that weren't paid last year were not allocated last year as an expenditure?
Well, they have been appropriated, but there wasn't enough cash to that.
With enough revenue coming in.
And you're saying this is for what fund?
It's community correction.
And so the
It's
bill,
project income. So it's the money that we bring in from offenders to be part
From
of
the
the program.
beds, right?
Yep.
the
So was
bills
this-
weren't paid because there wasn't enough cash on hand.
There was cash on hand through the commissary. So I want it to go on record. We have, this body has no oversight of commissary. And
Correct.
I'm speculating, and Tony, this is not at you. You are trying to solve a problem, and I want to commit to help you and your team solve the problem. But it would appear that budget shortfalls were met with commissary funds, given $1 million to $80,000 over the course of 6, 7, 8 years. That was spent down likely to cover what would be budgeted items.
So
That's
this has
accurate.
been going on for years.
I wanted to bite my tongue, but I want to be clear that this body does not oversee commissary, and would appear commissary funds were used to meet shortfalls. And we've got a problem to address, and we need to address it.
And these are legitimate expenses that need to be paid. That's the point. And one can have their own opinions, like we have no responsibility, but commissary funds are not statutorily required to pay bills. They can be used to replace chairs that are broken, or to provide tables for people to eat at, or functions like that, but they're not directed to pay shortfalls in budgets, correct?
That is correct. We can also, there's a variety of things we can use it for. We can
Yes.
use it to pay the salary of the person that works in
Yes.
commissary. We can use it for training for our employees. We can use it for some programming. There's a variety of things. And like I said, I'm not accusing anybody of spending any money out of commissary that wasn't statutorily allowed.
Right. Nor
What
am
it
I.
did though is it appeared as to you guys, to your board, that everything was fine. And then the fund that you guys have zero oversight of was drained. And so rather than draining it down to zero, I guess I'm requesting that we seek funding to get us through the end of the year from probably where it should be coming from to begin with. And I say that with knowing that historically it's been self-funded, and we want to continue to try to do that as best we can. There's other avenues that we're pursuing to generate, not to generate money. We're not selling widgets here, but to collect money that's owed to us. And so different programs, different incentives, trying to reward good behavior. We can punish bad behavior. If somebody doesn't pay fees, we can send them back to jail, but that doesn't get their fees paid. And we can request it. We can't, of course we have judges, but So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reward good behavior, and we've got policies that are in the works. Hopefully we get approval next week for that very policy to reward good behavior, incentivize offenders that are playing by the rules and doing everything they're supposed to be doing and staying clean, paying their fees, allowing them a little bit more freedom for incentive time. So, whether it's a couple hours to be able to go to dinner or to be able to go shop at Walmart or whatever it may be.
I talked to Anthony about this afternoon. I've suggested to him that we might ask tonight what it is that the council might need from him before August meeting in the form of a report or whatever, so that we can take action, begin the action in August. Does this require any multiple readings?
No, it doesn't require multiple readings. I think tonight he's just asking for a consensus to cover payroll in the interim before the August meeting.
From the
Consensus
lid.
From the council, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, kind of where my thought on this is right now is, obviously, we're not acting on it tonight, but I'd be more inclined to fix this $300,000 problem with rainy day fund money instead of utilizing the jail lit for it.
All legal funds, so that salaries have to be paid directly from the fund. So
You can't pay salaries out of rainy day.
We can't transfer rainy day funds.
you can't pay directly from
Okay.
How much does your commissary fund, how much does it generally make in a year?
I can't accurately say that with my junior level of experience. I can say that when I came in March, we were about 70,000, and we're looking at about 100,000 right now.
I think that's one of those data points that would be good to put together before next month, is kind of give us a history of the commissary fund, starting balance, collections, expenditures, or disbursements, however it's classified, and then ending balance.
Does anybody else see the quandary here about this being like our correctional and rehabilitational facilities quality of service or of use and need is based on a fee that is collected from the very people that are using it? I don't know. I'm having a little bit of trouble with that. In that we need to be able to be providing an adequate service. And I understand the need to get them in a good mode of operation to improve their own life. And Am I on the wrong track here? I just feel like we need to get above that line where we're maybe being pushed to get these people to provide a bigger fee.
So we are, it's a weird, not weird, that's a bad word. A unique situation to where we are a service that collects money. So, where one person might look at it as a service to the community for what we're doing, we're getting them into programming, and we're getting them a job that enables them to gain a little bit of money so they can get out and get a house, and they're able to pay their child support while being incarcerated, and all these different things. We're providing that service, while another person might look at it as we are a business that's selling widgets, and we've got money in and money out, and we need to have more money coming in than we have going out. And we are stuck somewhere in the middle of that.
But this isn't a unique model. This is the model that exists throughout.
This is the model. And again, historically in Johnson County, we've been self-funded of the multiple locations that I've been at. I had 3 in the last few weeks. I hate to say the Hamilton word, but I did go to Hamilton County, Hendricks, and Du Bois. All 3 of those facilities each get some money out of general funds. So none of them were self-funded. 100 totally self-funded. They also all got more state grants, so.
But clarifying that they receive some general fund money, not all, but they do receive the DOC funding,
They still receive.
and then they also charge for the services.
Correct.
But
And how they charge varies. So some of them have, like what we do, $20 a day. Hendricks County, they charge 20% of somebody's wages. And it's based off of a trust. They don't look at paychecks, they don't look at the wages. If you work at Wendy's and you make $12 an hour, they get 20% of it based on the trust that that offender is going to pay, figure out what 20% is. If they work at a factory and they make $30 an hour, they get 20% of that.
But the
So-
point being is that there are other counties have a expectation of it coming out, partially coming out of general fund,
Yes, sir.
where we haven't.
We have no clue how long this has been going on. I mean, in the account history,
This as in using commissary money to pay for,
right?
if I had to guess, I'd say 6 years, give or take.
Anything else council needs from him before the next meeting? That was my question.
I'll follow up with Tony individually.
I'm sorry you're having to put up with all that cleanup mess, but we'll get it figured out.
It's just one hurdle to get over. There'll be another one too. So
Yeah, I think I'd like to make an appointment, maybe get with you and have a discussion on how we got, I get the gist of it, but I don't know how the county can afford to make up the amount of money needed to fund it as it is. Out of the general fund, it's essentially creating a completely new department within that fund. And I think it's going to take probably a combination of solutions and some creative meeting of the minds to get that done. I don't know what it is. Just mind boggled that it was allowed to get to this point. But we are here and we have to deal with it. But
Jim, I'll ask you and Tony, what part does the advisory board play in this?
yeah, he's been on the advisory board much longer than I have. So.
I promise I don't just want to talk about everything. Andy Barnhart, and now I'm going to speak on behalf of my role as a commissioner's appointee on the Community Corrections Advisory Board, of which I've been part of for 3 years. I can tell you, and I don't mind telling it like it is, because that's what I believe in doing. It's been a smoke and mirrors show as long as I've been on, and it's been that way before that. And quite frankly, the previous director would make it appear to the advisory board that everything was hunky-dory when it wasn't. And basically, when you have because I don't have the numbers in front of me and I don't remember what they are, if it costs $1 million to run community corrections per year, he would infer that the amount of money coming in was adequate to cover those expenditures when actually it wasn't. And he was making up that shortfall with the commissary funds, not illegally. That's been looked at. It's all we pay some of our bills out of our commissary fund for the same reason, to reduce some of the things that we do ask for out of the general fund. Nothing that was illegal going on there. However, he was telling this advisory board, which is set up by the state, comprised of, I don't know, there's like 30 people on it. It's a whole bunch of people to oversee this with basically a PowerPoint presentation. You would come forward and say, look how wonderful everything is. And even though I worked for community corrections 20 some years ago, my career, we had 100 people on work release and sometimes upwards of 200, 300 on house arrest. We're lucky to have maybe half that number. And a lot of that is due to trust issues that the judges had with community corrections. And again, that's putting it out there, frankly, that's just the truth. So the numbers were being shown to keep at this level. If it was fully, if community corrections was full with 100 people on work release and expenses didn't go up, these two numbers would have met. But as that went, the numbers went down, then the income went down. And as expenditures went up and then the fees didn't raise to meet that, that's where the shortfall came up. And to boost up that shortfall, he was simply paying for it out of commissary, not saying anything. I don't know if it was because he thought that was going to make him look better, like he wasn't doing his job or what the case may be. But that's how it got to the point where it was. So there is oversight by its advisory board. But when that advisory board that meets once a quarter is told, everything's great, here it is in numbers, here's what our bills are, and oh, look, they're being paid. But turns out some of them actually weren't being paid to the tune of, I don't remember, several $100,000. So not only were we flat out lied to, but we were also told that things were great when they weren't. And then so now it's catch up after that. That's what this.
But an extension of John's question, what is the advisory board's responsibility as it relates to budget issues when that's our responsibility?
Nothing. We don't oversight, other than being presented the information and that we have oversight. It's an oversight board. We don't have any oversight over commissary expenditures. We don't have oversight on any expenditures other than being told, here's what we're bringing in, here's what's going out. Everything's fine. We don't need to go to the council and ask for anything when that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
For quite a while.
They do approve fees and various things like that. So yeah, if I want to change in fees, whether it's the work release daily fee or the fee for drug screenings or anything like that, then I do need to get approval from them. So there is that type of oversight, but not there's no accountant going through our books.
But they don't say you can't spend this money on this, you can't spend this money on that. Your budget comes to us of how you want to spend it, and then we make our judgments, but they don't say, oh, spend more money over here and spend less over here.
No, and as far as commissary is concerned, statutorily, there's certain things that you cannot spend the money on. And it would take an audit to catch that, I guess. But again, I can't say it enough. That has not happened. Things have been paid for out of there that were allowed to be paid for out of there. Just, as he said, it looked fine over here in council. And in reality, it was just taking money from somewhere else.
Thank you for the information.
I guess and once again, Tony, this isn't at all to grill you. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. For years, whether it be, back to the Albert Hessman era, this was completely grant funded and never ran into this type of issue. So if I'm hearing you right, the grants, as community corrections was growing, needs was growing, inflation, the grants stayed stagnant and they were never written to make up that rise in cost.
That's my speculation. I know that there was the same amount the last couple of years because we were looking at that to write for next year's grant. I can't say the last time that it was increased. I wish I had that number for you, but I'll bring it back to you.
That's to me where it seems that the problem lies. And I'd be curious to see what other counties fund any part of their community corrections out of the general fund. If it's something that we've fallen behind in times and standard or best practices, then maybe we need to take a look at how we're doing business. But quite honestly, what it seems is most likely is just years of mismanagement and lack of proper grant writing.
Well, and I think too that the quicker we can get to the correctional and rehab facility lit and move as many things as we can over to that, to get them out of the general fund that are coming out of the general fund at this point in time, and there will be some things. correct? Some utilities, facility wide.
Currently,
No, no.
Everything's grant.
no, as utilities increase, we cover it as inflation happens, we cover it.
It's like juvenile. It's for all practical intents and purposes, covers its own way. But
So this is a learning thing for me because going forward, we've talked about doing something. And a part of the correctional and rehab facility lit is you're able to use portion of that to fund operational expenses. And so what I'm hearing is there won't be any.
No, I'm the opposite of that. That what he's saying
Currently.
is currently they're not using it, but for the remainder of the year to request some of it
No,
to be used.
I understand all that.
But
Well,
for
I'm-
next
I'm-
year.
I'm looking at when we do go on forward.
Well,
Talking
no,
about
he's
for a new
looking on
facility.
the future too, that the consideration of lit funding from the correctional facility, which is a legitimate expense for portions of that till they can get to the point, and maybe it will not be quote unquote self-funded. But the conundrum is what Jim just said, that we have, there are communities where in fact they are contributing from the general fund. We will be contributing, so to say, from the authorized lit portion under the authorized, not out of the general fund. So the general fund would not be would not be tapped for any of this. It would come out of the lit, is his suggestion.
That's what I
Next year.
thought. Thank
Next
you.
year,
Okay.
Is there any other information I can gather for you guys before August? Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Wasn't so bad, was it?
No.
No, I still
Wait a
think we need
minute.
to, I
I
think
told
we
him
still
to
need a
take about 5
consensus
minutes.
to get some money.
You can't cover the next payroll, right?
We are going to be short.
So this is all long-term, which is definitely needed, but in the short term, they need a consensus to use that criminal justice lit for, well, at least the next payroll, the next couple payrolls. But that's what he's asking, to fund those positions out for the rest of the year, because we don't have enough.
Can
money.
we
Before
vote on
August.
that tonight?
before
You
August.
can't vote on it. They're asking for a consensus. So you
Oh,
can bring the formal proposal to you next
yeah,
month.
I mean, I think we don't have much of a choice. Yes.
With payroll.
Right,
They
exactly.
need
You
to
want
be
to give
able
those
to have a
people paid.
place to pay these people from until you do make a decision on what you're gonna do.
Go ahead, move on that. We're not making such adjustments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do the advertising, you can't vote on it.
So we say yes, but it's really not official.
And
Just
again, I
like raises
apologize
as a
that I wasn't on the
recommendation.
agenda. for tonight.
Okay.
So what,
I don't really like that method, but
Right.
it's what we have to do.
what, am I hearing that the 280 to 300 is the amount for the rest of the year or the amount of the next payroll? We can't
For the rest, that's the projected shortfall
Okay,
till the end of the year.
what is the approximate 30-day need until we can convene in August? And I'm asking the question because if there is commissary funds of a sufficient balance, I would just urge you to go to your commissary funds until we can meet publicly.
I believe I can only pay for the commissary employee out of the commissary funds. I can't pay for other people's salaries out of the commissary.
I thought I heard salaries were an appropriate use. Okay.
So Sheena, I always have a problem with, so we want a consensus. Does that mean we're going like this? Or, I mean, we're not voting. What are we doing on a consensus?
You're basically consenting to allowing these employees to be paid for the next couple of payrolls until you can get to your August meeting and make your formal appropriation.
Okay, but when we consent, how are we consenting if we don't say, yes, I consent?
You're saying it right now, aren't you?
Well, but we don't do a roll call.
No, is there a general consensus here? or-
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay,
See,
that's
How
what I
easy
want.
was that?
Damn.
Let's hear it.
Leave on that, unless anybody else has anything.
No, that's it.
I didn't say that.
That I would entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Motion moved.
Motion by John T, a second by John Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Or adjourned.